Hi, Year 11. Welcome to our first online society and culture lesson. Don't stress, it's all going to be fine. We're just going to work through the rest of our syllabus together. So, on that note, I thought I would just give you a reminder about where we're up to in our syllabus. So, this is our second topic, the nature of the development of personal and social identity. We've done all these dot points, all these on here, all the influence on socialization, nature and nurture, and last term we finished up on this dot point right here, adolescence as a social construct and its validity for different cultures. We had a look at this worksheet, hopefully that rings some bells for you. If it doesn't, it's on Schoolbox and you need to go and have a look at it. What we're going to do today is start looking at this dot point right here, theories that offer an explanation or understanding of the development of the physical and social self. And we're going to have a look at some different theorists and what theorists do in regards to society and culture. After that, we have two more things to do for this topic. We'll need to look at the transition through the life course and one of these theories here. And then we've also got to this dot point here about looking at the transition through the life stages for a different cultural group. We did this a little bit for the Amish in term one when we looked at Rumspringa, but we're going to do a different focus study this term to broaden our horizons. So that's a bit of a catch up for you. Hopefully you know where we're at, and now we can get into some content. What I'll ask you to do is to pause me every so often to get some notes down, and then at the end of this video there is a task for you to do that you'll need to upload as due work, and I'll explain that to you at the end. So let's go. So here's the dot point we're looking at today. I mentioned it just before. Theories that offer an explanation or understanding of the physical and social self. So this needs to be a big heading in your books because it is a syllabus dot point. The first thing we need to think about is what exactly a theory and a theorist is. We've kind of talked about them a little bit in class before, but this is our opportunity to really delve into the meaning of them. So a theorist is someone who develops a theory. They research to explore an idea and then let that idea be extensively tested, often by other people, so it's something called a peer review, to make sure that their results are accurate and truly reflect that they are getting the correct information. Once it's been thoroughly examined, once that information has been checked by other research and academics, and it's surpassed one situation, we can begin to call that information a theory. Even the most widely accepted theories have a long way to go before they become social fact. We have such diversity in human experience between cultures, across races, over generations, that it's quite hard for a theory to get universal acceptance. But we try to use these theories that people develop, that theorists develop, as a basis to predict behaviour and to make assumptions about society on the whole. They attempt to show some understanding about the world and to try and justify people's actions to a degree or help people plan for things moving forward. For this topic, we're going to look at a couple of different theorists that deal with the physical and social self, and we're going to look at a variety of theorists because no single theory or theorists can cover all aspects of human development. There's so many things that come into play when it comes to humans that we need to look at a wide variety of different perspectives. These theorists will help us do that. You can pause me now and take a few notes from this. You don't need many, just a couple from each dot point will be fine. When it comes to understanding how we grow up and how we mature, there are 4 different factors that really influence that process. On one end, we have the physical development. We have the fact that people get taller, that they get stronger. We have our cognitive development, how people grow in terms of their academics. We have moral development, where people are starting to learn things like right and wrong and what's good and bad. And then we have our emotional and social development, where people are learning how to act in social situations, what social norms are, and how we can really construct that across different societies. Often these two here are the ones that people struggle with the most: the moral, right and wrong, and the emotional, social development. Now, moral, right and wrong is an interesting one because people's morals differ. They differ from person to person, family to family, culture to culture. So it's really difficult for us to often pinpoint what actually is right and wrong in some different situations. And I'm going to give you a scenario in a minute that talks about that in just a little minute. Emotional and social development is something that many adults struggle to do. The idea of being able to regulate yourself, being able to regulate your emotions and conform to social norms and social customs is something people find very difficult to do. And again, because those social norms and customs might change across cultures or change across generations, it often causes conflict. And this is where we can find people being cancelled or people having issues with one another because the emotional and social development of one generation is different to that of a previous one. And what we as a society have to do is find some common ground where we can make sure that we are on the same page. What these theorists do is try to develop different theories that explain each type of development, explain how we develop physically, explain how we develop cognitively, morally, and emotionally and socially. The first theorist and theory we're going to look at together is a man called Lawrence Kohlberg. He's an American psychologist, and his theory is on moral development, and the idea that we can stage moral development through different levels. The pre-conventional level of stage 1 and 2, the conventional level of stage 3 and 4, and the post-conventional level of stage 5 and 6. And the idea would be that as people grow and as people develop, they come into themselves, they go from being a child to an adolescent to being an adult, they move through these stages of moral reasoning and moral development in order to gain a sense of overall morality. What is hard for people to understand though is that often people kind of get stuck around this level, stage 4 and stage 5, and it's very difficult even for adults to reach this idea of stage 6 where the universal principle of ethics comes into play. Now what I'm going to do is show you a quick video to explain all these stages, and then we're going to dissect that a little bit, so hopefully this works.
Lawrence Kohlberg's theory claims that our development of moral reasoning happens in 6 stages. The stages themselves are structured in 3 levels: pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. To understand this better, imagine a conflict at school. There is a fight in the schoolyard. 2 ninth graders are beating up Tom. Those who watch the fight are at different stages of moral development. Let's see what they do and how they justify their behavior. At stage 1, we make moral judgments based on obedience and punishment. Finn's sense of good or bad is directly linked to whether he gets punished or not. Finn sees what is happening to his friend and wants to help, but he doesn't because he is afraid the teacher may punish him if he gets caught fighting. He asks himself, how can I avoid punishment? At stage 2, we are motivated by self-interest. Mary decides to intervene and help Tom. She knows that she might get punished, but she also knows that she could become a victim herself someday. If she helps Tom now, he might help her in the future. She is asking herself, what's in it for me? At stage 3, interpersonal accord and conformity guide our moral judgment. Betty sees the fight and wants to intervene, but when she realizes that all the others are just watching, she decides not to get involved. She wants others to see that she is a good girl who is conforming with the ethics of the community. She asks herself, what do others think of me? At stage 4, we value authority and want to maintain social order. When the teacher sees the group fighting, he immediately steps in and shouts, "Stop! Fighting at school is forbidden." He feels that, above all, it is important to follow the rules, otherwise chaos breaks out. He feels it is his duty to uphold the rules that sustain a functioning society. He asks himself, how can I maintain law and order? At stage 5, we understand rules as a social contract, as opposed to a strict order. Jessie, who watches from afar, is not sure how she feels about this. To her, rules make sense only if they serve the right purpose. Obviously, the school rules prohibit fighting, but maybe Tom deserves to finally learn his lesson. Just yesterday, he punched a young girl from grade 1. She asks herself, does a rule truly serve all members of the community? At stage 6, we are guided by universal ethical principles. All those involved now have to face the headmaster. He first explains the school rules and why they exist. He then clarifies that rules are valid only if they are grounded in justice. The commitment to justice carries with it an obligation to disobey unjust rules. The headmaster's highest moral principle is compassion. He believes that all people should learn to understand each other's viewpoints, and that they don't feel alone with their feelings. He asks, what are the abstract ethical principles that serve my understandings of justice? At the pre-conventional level, Finn is driven by fear and Mary by self-interest. Both judge what is right or wrong by the direct consequences they expect for themselves and not by social norms. This form of reasoning is common among children. At the conventional level, Betty responds to peer pressure, and the teacher follows the rules. Their morality is centered around what society regards as right. At this level, the fairness of rules is seldom questioned. It is common to think like this during adolescence and adulthood. At the post-conventional level, Jessie knows that things are complicated because individuals may disobey rules inconsistent with their own morality. The headmaster follows a universal ethical idea, at complete disconnect with what society thinks or the rules say. To him, everything is solved through compassion. The right behavior, in his opinion, is therefore never a means to an end, but always an end in itself. Not every person reaches this level.
Okay, so that was a really brief overview of Lawrence Kohlberg and his theory of moral development, and how where we sort of sit on this scheme of moral development might determine our actions in a given situation. So if we think about the scenario that he played out, the one about the school fight, think about where you might sit on this scale. What would your response have been? Would you wanted to avoid getting in trouble, so you stay away from the fight? Would you want to conform to social norms by not getting involved? I probably sit here around the loyalty to law and order and following the rules. Or are you a bit more up here, thinking that rules are different in every situation and we can't apply this theory of universality? Or are you one of the lucky few up here that understands this universal principle of ethics? Have a think about where you sit and how perhaps some of your factors around socialization might determine where you sit on this scheme. The HEINZ dilemma is one of the most famous scenarios used when discussing Kohlberg's theory of moral development. Essentially, the dilemma is that a man, HEINZ, his wife is dying of cancer. There's a drug that can cure her, but it's too expensive for him to afford. He's borrowed as much money as he can, and he still can't afford to buy the medicine. So, what should HEINZ do? Should he steal the medicine? Should he let his wife die? Should he steal the medicine and go to prison and suffer the consequences for his actions? Read this and have a think about what you would do. Pause it and really think about it. Okay, hopefully you've really thought about what you would do. Would you let the woman die? Would you steal the medicine? Would you tell anybody if you stole it? And what we can do then is look at where you sit on Kohlberg's scale, depending on what your response would be. So here is the levels are pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional, and all the different answers that people tend to come up with for this dilemma. Now, if you've come up with something different, it's all good. These are just the most common. So have a look at these, and again, think about where you sit. Are you looking at that obedience or self-interest? Are you looking at conformity and law and order? Or are you really at that post-conventional, above ethics, human rights level? Like I said, a really brief overview into one theorist and his theory on moral development. These are some of the other most popular sociology theorists: Erik Erikson, Abraham Maslow, James Fowler, David Elkind, Carol Gilligan, Robert Havinghurst, and Jane Lovinger. What we're going to do is have a look at these in a bit more detail, but I'm going to put it over to you to do that. So in pairs, you're going to be researching one of the theories listed on the previous slide, and you need to create an A4 handout. Now, it can be just a plain Word doc, it could be an infograph, it can be a Google Doc, I don't mind. You just need to include the criteria listed below. Now, because we are a bit stretched for time and online learning makes things a bit more difficult, I have allocated pairs. They are just randomly allocated based off a online spinner. Please contact the person that you've been paired with and get that started. As I said, I don't mind if it's a Google Doc, an infograph, or a straight up Word doc, whatever works best for you. And what you need to do is submit your A4 page by the end of this lesson. So you've got all the time left right now, which should be about half an hour, and you should be able to get that done in your partnership. Upload it here as a task, or if that doesn't work for any particular reason, one of you needs to email me, please. If you have any trouble doing this or aren't sure where to start looking for information, please send me an email. I'll be around for the rest of this lesson and able to reply to those. Hopefully that's all made sense. If you have any questions about any of the content, please let me know. See you tomorrow.